COVID isn't putting us in the hole, but I didn't think it would be, because although we were losing some income, we were also saving on some staffing and other costs, so it should all have worked out, which it has. All right. So that's our financial report. We had a motion on that. So we're moving on then to item 10.1.
I'll sign off, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks again, Nick.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I get a motion on our cannabis consumption bylaw?
Councilor Stenhouse.
All right.
That council give third and final reading to bylaw 09-2020, the cannabis consumption bylaw, this 23rd day of June 2020.
Okay, thank you for that. And is there any discussion on this bylaw?
I know it's kind of smoking vaping. Is that for a certain age? What's that one? So if they catch, you know, if our bylaws people are at a high school, then they can give them $150 fine.
I don't know.
I'll ask the question.
Brian, can you hear me? Wave if you can.
No, sorry, I could hear something about 18, but that was about it.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can.
Okay. I know that the province was introducing a bylaw or a law that had to do with vaping and vaping in schools and that, but I didn't think it had gone through yet. So how is that going to affect this one? Since you've got, because the new one is going to be no vaping in schools at all. Is the one that is, I don't think they've finalized it yet. I know we're talking about high school kids not allowed to vape at all. So that's, yeah, well, right now our kids vape in the high school and vape in the junior high and vape in the public school.
There's nothing in here that's like the schools.
Sorry, but I mean, if you can't, I'm not sure what was all said. Sorry about that, Councillor Gilroy, but I think it was, should you be able to say something about public place, and all public places are not allowed, right? So that goes without saying, you can't do it within a school.
You're breaking up.
Oh.
And Judy was laughing at you.
I'm sounding like a chipmunk?
Yeah.
No.
Slow-mo.
Slow-mo.
No.
You were in slow-mo.
Oh.
You made her day, though, I gotta tell you that.
Okay, I was just making a comment about public places, that schools being a public places. Do we need to mention that separately?
I don't believe it's law yet.
Public place, in public.
See, right?
But this is about cannabis brand. We're not talking about vaping.
But it's mentioned.
No, it says vape on there. It says vape in there.
Smoking
It
and
says a
vaping
person
cannabis.
must not smoke or vape or consume cannabis in any public place.
Yes, you can't smoke cannabis, you can't vape cannabis, and you can't consume cannabis in public.
That's how I'm
This is
reading it.
cannabis
It's
bylaw.
directed at cannabis only.
Yeah.
Not a
So then-
vaping bylaw.
So then what do we do about that? Would we have to make a new one then?
Yeah,
For vaping?
that would be a provincial thing of vaping. That wouldn't be our bylaw. It'd be a provincial law.
But tell the difference between vaping cannabis and,
Yeah, you can.
I don't know. I just go by certain houses and smell it. I think that place is yours.
Just walk across the street,
I just go by.
Okay, I could catch a bit of that, and it was about, wanting to build something about vaping and not necessarily vaping cannabis, and that would be a separate bylaw. I could hear Councillor Danaka. Any other comments on this before we vote?
No, it's strictly cannabis.
Seeing none. Is there anybody opposed to giving this third final reading?
Marijuana, yeah, sorry.
One.
Seeing none?
One.
One? Okay, so we have 3 in favor.
Yes.
All right, so that carries. Now moving on, we moved down item 10.2, the fees bylaw, so we're going to go to the next one, the resident complaint policy, item 10.3. Can I get a motion on this one? Councillor Danaka made that motion.
Finding it. Okay. Yes, I make a motion that council approve policy ADM 02-2020 resident complaint policy this 23rd day of June 2020. Says the 10th. Says the 10th.
This is 23rd, not the 10th.
Good adjustment on those, on that option. Yeah, made the correction for the date. Any comments on this particular policy?
Councillor Gilroy.
Is this a new policy that is just started? Because I thought this was one of the complaints that Ross had a number of times ago. Same different one? Well, he was here and he's on listed as a public, coming here and talking in public about it. And so I can mention his name because he asked for that 4 or 5 times. I'm just wondering if this is to replace or is this the one he's talking about? It's a new one altogether. Okay.
Just one comment, in number 2 in the policy, purpose is misspelt. Okay, any other comments before we vote on this one?
Nope, none.
Just giving it first reading?
So
Oh, this is only one reading. It's a policy, sorry, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyone opposed to this?
One, Councillor Gilroy.
Okay. It is carried then. Moving on to our next item, which would be the animal control bylaw. Item 10.4, can I get a motion on that one? Did anybody make a motion there? No? I can make a motion here. I'll make the motion that council give first reading to bylaw 14-2020, the animal control bylaw, the 23rd day of June 2020.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Any discussions
Yeah.
on this one?
Councillor Stenhouse has a comment.
Okay, I got a couple things here. So when you say that we are when we're giving first reading to this bylaw, again, this is not a new bylaw, is it?
No, this is an existing bylaw,
Okay, well,
the animal control bylaw.
so should the motion not say that we're just amending it and we're removing bees and hens from the bylaw?
But they're listed in it. They're still listed in it though.
Yeah, but the motion, shouldn't we just be saying that we're removing bees and hens from the bylaw?
We aren't removing bees and hens,
Why?
because that's part of the animal control bylaw.
Yeah.
But it,
But yes, but if we fast forward, we're letting people have bees and
Right, but
hens.
if you read the bylaw, it says you can't have, no person shall keep or cause bees, bovine, porcine, poultry, unless that person has a license issued by the town. It's still part of the animal control bylaw, but it now says you have to have a license in order to keep in the town limits.
Can you find out the other folder on previous Sunday?
Okay, yeah, but
Is this one?
I don't, okay, this whole bylaw needs to be looked at. Because, okay, just here's one of my examples. If you go to whatever, let's talk about the dogs here. G and H. Okay? So they mention a guard dog, they mention a guide dog, but there's no mention of a service dog. So what happens if somebody has a service dog?
the service dog and the guide dog the same thing?
No, a guide dog leads blind people around. A service dog is, people use them for anxiety, or they have trained dogs that can detect low blood sugars. There's no mention of that. And then, there's other things I want to talk about.
How come you guys approve it?
No, we didn't even look at it. I thought we were just removing bees and poultry from the bylaw so that we could pass our hen and bees.
No, we changed the bylaw to add that,
Poultry.
that says that, but you need a license
Yeah.
to have bees and,
Okay. No.
we're not removing them because they're still part of the animal control bylaw.
But it's, no person shall keep or cause to keep on any premises with the municipal address within the town limits, bees or poultry.
But
We're
it says
accepting,
unless that person has a license issued by the town. They have to come and pay their license fee that we discussed in our bee bylaw of how much they come and pay they get a license, they pay their $10 per chick or hen or whatever, and
What's the penalty for contravening it? Or is it in the bylaw, the penalty for,
okay, well, I was saving this for the chicken bylaw, but let's talk about it now then. Let's go to page 27, 7.3. Are we there? Page 27, 7.3. So I was saving this for the hen bylaw because it says, fail to keep rabbits/pigeons in a pen not conforming to the required distance from the residence. I discovered this late today. That's why I wanted to save the fees bylaw for later. So we have a bylaw for pigeons. We're allowing pigeons, so why did we go through all this hoopla with the hens if there's a bylaw for pigeons? And if we're going to allow chickens in our chicken bylaw, shouldn't we state that you can either have chickens or pigeons? You can't have them both?
So, Councillor Stenhouse, if I can, what you're saying is that in somewhere in these fines, it talks about fining if they don't notify the town of a commercial undertaking of poultry or any kind of bird within the town limits.
No.
And you're saying that why do we have rabbits and poultry in there if they're not allowed to keep it anyways? Is that what you're asking?
Exactly. Well, I was wondering, like, why do we have a fine for not keeping pigeons at the conformed distance from a residence? And we went through all the looking up, making a hen bylaw, because pigeons and hens should fall under the same category. Like, we should have just looked at our pigeon policy.
Yeah, and I don't believe that we have a policy on pigeons. So that might lead to the point, your point is a good one, that maybe we should be modifying the hen bylaw to add other birds, like pigeons.
Councillor Gilroy has a question.
On that same specified penalties, it's kind of confusing when you look at 7.3 and 7.4. If you fail to keep rabbits and or pigeons in a pen not conforming to required distances from residents, you pay $100. But for that same $100, you can have a permit to allow your rabbits and your pigeons to become a nuisance. That makes absolutely no sense.
Your fine of $100. Well, yeah.
It makes no sense because they're basically contravening each other.
The wording is kind of odd. 7.6, basically, as the owner, you permit or allow your animals to escape run at large, it's a $100 fine. If you, as an owner, you keep or confine pigeons in a locked pen contrary to guidelines, it's a $200 fine.
And what are the guidelines?
7.4, as an owner, if you permit or allow your rabbits to become a nuisance, it's a $100 fine. So you're looking at the word permit as a permit. It means to permit or allow,
That's,
not as a permit to allow, like,
if we permit or allow them to have rabbits or pigeons become a nuisance, and all they need is pay $100. That's basically the way it reads. That makes, and if you look before it, it says fail to do it, which would probably be a nuisance. We pay $100. So I pay $100, I can have the biggest nuisance possible, according to this. It makes,
you're looking, I think you're looking at the word permit as a permit. You're paying $100
to permit is to allow.
exactly.
So I pay $100 penalty, and I'm allowed to do this now.
No, you're not.
No.
If you do that.
If you allow them to become a nuisance, you pay a $100 fine.
I think we need to change the.
Exactly.
Well, we can stop this at first reading, and we can take this back to the bylaw because it ain't gonna get passed anyway. So it's 9:30. I don't want to sit here and argue about the animal control bylaw because it's not gonna pass. So move along. Let's take it to the bylaw and let's move on.
Because these bylaws need to be clear so that people can understand them.
Okay, so I can see here there are some issues with this bylaw, and it can go back to, we can do first reading, take it back, and to the bylaw review committee, go from there. So, any other comments before we vote on first reading?
No, none.
Okay, none. Okay. Anyone opposed to the first reading?
I am.
Councillor Stenhouse is.
Okay. So we have one opposed,
Carried.
3, 4. So it's carried.
Yes.
Okay. So, and hearing the complaints, we could go through and look at this some more. So we'll send it to the Bylaw Review Committee. So moving on then to our next item, which is the beekeeping bylaw. Item 10.5. Can I get a motion on this one?
Councillor Gilroy.
All right. Councillor Gilroy.
The council give first reading to bylaw 12/2020, the beekeeping bylaw, this 23rd day of June 2020.
Okay. I heard the start of it, but it sort of tailed off. It's funny, I can hear Councillor Stenhouse and Danaka, but I can't hear Councillor Gilroy very good. I'm not sure why, but...
Selective hearing.
Maybe because you're close to that microphone and it's cut out.
No selected.
Yeah. Anyways, any comments on this bylaw at this point?
Yes.
Councillor Stenhouse has a comment.
Okay.
Okay, so just before I come from, I know I'm very embarrassed because I'm on the bylaw committee. But just before I come tonight, if you go to page 4C, 9C, that they have to notify, proof of providing notification to all neighbors located within 300 feet radius from the site. So just before I come to the meeting tonight, I was out with my measuring tape and I measured from my house 300 feet. That means I have to go past 4 houses into the middle of the intersection. 300 feet is a long... That means that they would have to notify almost 2 square blocks that they were having a bee.
Okay,
does
so
anybody
what
else-
did the other bylaws that you reviewed as part of the bylaw review committee say about how far people should be notified?
I don't recall reading about a distance. Oh.
This bylaw was struck up by MMSA, so I'm sure that they did the research and come up with a...
If I remember, we had some from Lacombe and stuff, and basically this bylaw is taken from, or Lamont or whatever, and we just took their bylaw and tweaked it and made it our own.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking, where what the number is. I mean, somebody could say, well, why isn't it 250 feet? Or, so this is the question, and I'm sure we're using what is the standard out there. I don't think we just extended that length, but I don't know the answer to that.
Like, should it not read the adjacent neighbors within so many feet? Because 300 feet from, I'm not kidding, from my house, 300 feet, I have to go past 4 houses and into the middle of the intersection. And that's just one way.
You're trying to say the adjacent properties? Like
Yes.
2 properties over, 3
Yeah,
properties over?
exactly. Because that's a lot of people you're going to have to notify.
If they want bees, I guess they have to notify them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but we don't want to make this so difficult that they can't have them.
Yeah, but
I mean, this is stuff that was from the MMSA bylaw, and I think from the Grand Prairie's beekeeping bylaw as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't recall from the other bylaws reading a distance
They gave it last meeting, the map. So
Yeah.
we did-
I did have one question though. The 0.5 C 9CV. 9CV. I'm sorry. I was just going to ask.
What
Should that
page
be-
are you on?
9CV is page 4 still. I'm just
Oh.
wondering if that should say an Alberta beekeeping
9C, what?
one, or can it be anywhere? I'm just asking, whatever you guys think. I'm just saying, should it be an Alberta approved course? Or can it be like BC or Nova Scotia or Florida or California, whatever? It's just saying approved bee course. Are we saying an approved Alberta one? Or are we saying anywhere in the world, as long as they can show I passed a beekeeping course? What kind of course are we talking about here? I just want clarification on that.
But you have the license to,
It just says proof of completing a beekeeping training course from a recognized organization or association. It does not say what jurisdiction. I think it should be Alberta. Is that just the word Alberta?
I mean, that could be added, it's not.
Well, I'm just asking your opinion.
Okay. Other than the concern over the 300 feet, is there any other issues with this bylaw?
just 1 second.
I can't hear if there's anything else, Brian.
No, go ahead, no, it's good.
Okay.
No other comments?
None.
Okay. Just so I didn't hear all of the conversation that went on after about the 300 feet. Is the people all right with giving it first reading and then going back to the bylaw and somebody doing some research on 300 feet versus 250, or where did that number come from?
I think that number came out of MMSA.
Oh, okay.
Because the drawing that he showed was a 300-foot radius.
Yeah. Well, and I'm assuming that it came from some study, from other regulations. And they did have, when they came in, they did show us the Edmonton beekeeping bylaw, right?
No, it's in guideline. What's in the bylaw? It's a guideline that they showed us. Remember? Is that it?
He's saying it's a guideline, not a bylaw.
The public delegation presented us a guideline.
Okay, but if you don't follow the guidelines, then you won't be given a permit and you won't be able to keep them. I'm just going online actually to see what they say on the Edmonton bylaw. Here it is. It says neighboring notification. Prior to submitting an application, every beekeeping applicant must notify all immediate surrounding neighbors, including those attached to their property or attached or across an alleyway, in writing of their intent to keep bees. This requirement is a notification to neighbors, not a request for permission.
That makes more
So
sense.
in this one, a neighbor is defined as the owner or tenant of each property abutting the applicant's property, including those across an alleyway, but not across a street. In the case where neighboring properties are an apartment building, building managers are to receive the notification letter. So they define notification of neighbors as immediately adjoining, not 300 feet. I can see that makes a lot of sense in one way, in that it's very easy to define. As soon as you go 300 feet, you know, you're going to a radius. Somebody could be going, well, it touches, it's 3 inches inside in my property, I want to be notified. And trying to figure that out. So I do like the idea of just saying, or even if it's 2 neighbors or whatever the case may be, but it makes it a little simpler as opposed to saying 300 feet.
I think in courtesy it would be better to do a wider distance than that. Just in case, you know, neighboring kids have allergies or whatever, or family members. That's my thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it could be maybe, you know, 2 on each side, 2 neighbors on each side. Or 1 as it is, if you're abutting, that's what you need. But, yeah. Again, we could take that back. Bylaw could come back with a recommendation, look at some other bylaws and say, yeah, this is what we want to do. Is the bylaw committee up for that? When do they meet next?
I don't know.
I don't think we've set a date.
No, we haven't said a date.
No date has been set for the next meeting.
Maybe I need to check my schedule.
Okay. Well, there was no other complaints other than the 300 meters? Or 300 feet, sorry.
And the licensing part about an Alberta certified license, beekeeping license.
Oh, okay. What's a licensed course?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we have a motion for first reading, and we can vote on this, and then we can decide on whether it wants to go to further readings or not. So we'll start with first reading. Anybody opposed?
1.
The 1. Okay, so that first reading passes. What is the will of council? Do we want to take this back to bylaw before it comes back again?
Yes.
That's the okay. We'll send that back to bylaw. Moving on then to our hen keeping bylaw. 10.6. Is there a motion on this one?
Councillor Gilroy.
Okay, Councillor Gilroy, you're up.
The council give first reading to bylaw 13, 2020, the hen keeping bylaw, this 23rd day of June 2020. And I did have a question. If someone could please tell me where it mentions for or against having chicks, baby chicks with it. Okay, please tell me.
It says that your chicken must be at least 16 weeks old.
But if a chicken gives birth,
How can it give birth if there's no rooster?
artificial.
We're only allowing hens. Okay,
But it should say no chickens. Yes, I mean no chickens.
it does say, well, it's gotta be 16, Brian. Okay, are we open for discussion on this?
I'm not a church.
Ryan, the only hens are all girls. There's no boys. How are they doing? Okay.
You missed out some good conference.
Okay, I want to talk about this one. You might as well just send this straight to bylaw. Because on page 4, on page 5, on page 8, and page 9, coop is misspelled. So let's start with page 4.
Marion noticed that. She was going to fix it all.
Right on R, coop is misspelled. On page 5, Coop is misspelled.
We knew that.
Okay, and then I want to talk about there's a couple things I want to talk about. Do you not think that $10 a chicken is too high? Okay, here's the thing. Okay, I got to defend myself. The meeting started at 7. We got this bylaw at 5 after 7. We didn't have a chance to go over it. And I asked for a revised copy before it got sent to council, and I never got it. So that's my defense in this. Okay, so, yeah. That was another concern, that $10 per chicken is a little high.
Did you put a limit on the number of chickens they're allowed to have?
4.
4. That's $40 a family.
And Brian, maybe you can answer this for me. If you
Obviously I can't, because I don't know what a chicken is.
Well, go to page 9, number 26. The town can imprison somebody without going to court. 26B. You can either be fined or you can go to jail for a year or both.
Upon summary conviction, though.
But how does the town set what the penalty is? How long you go to jail for? Doesn't the judge decide that?
The judge has to have its parameters to.
Yeah, you can give up.
Yeah.
That's my comments. Send it to
Okay, anybody else with some comments?
I'm just going to chicken out here.
No. No other comments? Okay. Again, I heard some of the comments, but not all of them, so I apologize on that. But the general gist is there was, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a couple of issues, but generally most of them were pretty minor is what I got out of that. Like, can you give a 1 year spelling and stuff? Okay. Okay, so we're all right. We'll move on to our vote then. Anybody opposed to giving it first reading? One? Okay. Now, is this one that needs to go to bylaw, or are we all right to go to second reading?
Bylaw.
It'll never make it through all readings anyways if we have one opposed, so we could send it to bylaw too.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we'll send it to bylaw and bring it back.
I want to know what that bylaw committee's doing.
Yeah.
research, but I'm not sure.
I thought these ones were going to bylaw before they came to council.
They did.
Oh,
Should be a,
Sorry, I wasn't
Passed
there.
them.
I was absent.
they did go to, and okay, and Councillor Stenhouse is on the bylaw committee?
yes.
Okay.
What's that committee?
You never should have taken me off
She
the
just
committee,
wants to
Brian.
meet again.
Never should have
All
taken me
right.
off that committee.
So moving on then to the fees bylaw.
I already stated my reasons for it.
We'll send them all back in.
Okay, fees bylaw. Can I get a motion on this one?
Make the motion and vote against the value.
Okay, I don't hear one, so I'll make the motion that council gives second reading to bylaw 10-2020, the amendment to the fees bylaw this 23rd day of June 2020. Okay, any comments on this bylaw? I know Councillor Stenhouse wanted to wait on this one.
So I already discussed my issues with that bylaw prior to the bees one, and I was, it had to do with the pigeons and the poultry and,
This is strictly fire.
what? Oh,
The 01-2020 is the fire department.
This is Senate.
ask.
This is Senate fund.
sorry, I apologize, no.
You got the wrong one, sorry, I got the wrong one.
Okay, I know the changes to this were to allow the fire department to charge for violations of the fire code.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just have a question.
Any other comments on this one, Councillor Tanaka?
Does this, I thought, and I could be wrong, but I thought these came into effect in January of 2021, not as of June 2020.
Well, I think that the previous bylaw is in place until a new bylaw comes in. So there is a fees bylaw in place now.
Yeah.
The new one will take place once it's approved.
This is just an amendment to the existing one.
This will be, these numbers will be added to
No, it's just an
the
amendment
one
to
in
the existing one. It's
21.
not changing the current. It's just adding to it.
Okay, any other questions, comments on this before we vote?
And
Seeing none, anybody opposed to this bylaw?
no,
Seeing none, okay. And I will make a motion that council give third and final reading to bylaw 1020, the amendment to the fees bylaw, the 23rd day of June 2020. Any discussion at this time? Seeing none? Anybody opposed? I don't hear anything. Okay, that bylaw passes. Moving on to item 10.7, which was the addition funding from the county. Can I get a motion on this one? I'll turn to Councillor Gilroy.
My original motion was to enter into a discussion about the response of Big Lakes County to the 2019 capital grant carryover.
Okay, can you repeat that motion just so I understand it, Brian?
I'd like council to enter into a discussion in regard to the Big Lakes County's response to the 2019 capital grant carryover.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just having a really tough time. Mr. Martinson, can you repeat the gist of it for me?
Go ahead.
he
Selective hearing.
he wants to hold an open discussion regarding Big Lake's letter
Okay.
to council regarding the 2019 capital grant carryover.
Okay, just for an open discussion was the motion.
Yeah.
Okay, now I've got it. Okay, thank you very much. We'll turn it over to any comments on this motion or around that funding.
Maybe I should go over there. Can you hear me if I'm like this? Brian, can you hear me with like this?
No.
I can hear you just a little bit.
Is that any better? Brian?
Say that again.
Let me just move
Go,
over there.
now.
I'm
Try
just
a
gonna.
different mic.
I'll just come
Go
over
around.
this side of you.
Brian, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. The discussion was based on the fact that Big Lakes County's letter talked about their 2020 assessment versus for a 2019 grant that they offered us. Therefore, the 2019 grant was in their 2019 budget, not the 2020 budget. I see no reason why they can take that back. In fact, a couple of questions I had that I'd like our council to discuss is, at what was the exact date did we sign, did we as a council agree to the new intermunicipal? When did it come into effect? And my whole problem with this is, if we allow this to happen, where they can dictate whatever years they want to claw back money if we've not spent it, it sets a very bad precedence. That they can say 2 years from now, oh, well, you didn't spend your 2021 money, and we need it for 2022, so we're going to take those 2 years back. Or maybe they're going to do another one. It's a matter of principle, and I want to know if we have more options for this kind of dispute, because $400,000+ is a lot of money. So
yes, you're right. It is a lot of money, and it becomes. Yeah, I agree.
And as I said, it's based on their budget was based on 2019 coffers. It was in their 2019 budget, and they're taking it back in 2020 because their 2020 budget is short. I don't think that's. I'm not even sure that's legal, but
I can give a little bit, and I'm sure our Mr. Martinson can explain more better than I can, because my understanding is that the funding was not approved because it wasn't an approved project that it was used for. Like, we had requested the funding for a road, and then we had changed the funding to something different, and I don't know if we had asked for that funding to come in after the fact. Is that safe, Brian? Because their budget had been probably closed for 2020 or 2019, and that's probably the rationale.
It is partially true, and what we did is we didn't do the 52nd Avenue, the extension on 52nd, but we did the water treatment plant. So, and they wanted invoiced on completed projects, and the water treatment plant isn't completed even as of today's date. So that's where it mixed up.
Well, one of our guidelines is that they took off that guideline in the new intermunicipal.
No, and I know what he's saying. It hurts to have that pulled out. There's no doubt about it. So I don't know what we can do about it for sure. Any ideas out there? I mean, we can talk to the county. Their council passed a motion. I don't know if we can change that motion, but can certainly have a conversation to express our disappointment, but I don't know if we can do much more than that.
There must be a mediator or somebody we can go to, because this, as I said.
No, any ideas on what we could do, how to approach it?
Come on.
Right, you just have to say, I want a mediator or something.
He's asking about a mediator.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they would have to agree mediators only work if the two parties agree, right?
Then why did we sign the contract in the first place?
Well, I think the first step before we go to a mediator is to have another discussion with them about it. Because we asked about it, they said no, and we haven't gone back to them with it. So I think before we can go to mediator, we could take a better look at it.
So as to try to resolve it amongst both parties.
Yeah.
I don't
So,
want to.
Brian, do you think that's something that you would do CAO to CAO, or do you think that's something better with the politicians at an intermunicipal?
We have support from the intermunicipal.
I think the intermunicipal committee supported the
No,
funding.
that was the 3 votes for it.
It was the other members of Big Lakes County that voted against it.
Do you want to just...
Councillor Jack has a comment.
Oh, okay.
So I understand where they're coming from in terms of, you know, like their money is vastly reduced, but unfortunately that's not our fault. I hate spending money on legal fees for no reason, but I see this as having our legal team look at this and see if the contract is binding in terms of, well, you said that you were going to give us this money, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I'd like to have a legal opinion on what our options are to see if there's something that we can do to try and rectify that. Because I mean, and I'm sure they understand, and I'm sure they realize that upgrades to the water treatment plant is in their benefit as well. Because I mean, we are supplying their water to the co-ops, and I know when we had passed the, I can't remember if it was a bylaw or whatever, when we okayed them to connect to I think it was Triangle Way or whatever. Like, we have that provision in there that the town of High Prairie residents take priority when it comes to water. But I would really like to get a legal opinion on if there's anything that we can do, or even if we have a valid claim saying, well, you know, you said that this is what you gave us, and your tax or your reduced income is for 2020, not 2019. So if we can get that and see what they say is an interpretation of the intermunicipal and their force du majeure clause, if it's valuable or viable, or if it's a valid reason to opt out.
Councillor Stenhouse has a comment.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Stenhouse.
So I'd like to know also, is this a two-way street? That if we have a shortfall of money, can we opt out of not paying our portion of some of their projects?
It's a specific section they're using. The airport, maybe? The airport, maybe? No. They're using a specific portion alone. And that is their option to jump out anytime they want. But you're using a signed agreement to claw back money that's there before the agreement's signed in the first place.
The airport and the website.
Sorry again, I couldn't hear all of that. I heard the noise stop, so I think the speaking was done. But yeah, I guess you know, what can we do? That's the step. We got go to legal advice. We got go to a mediator. We've got talk to them first.
Brian, here's the problem. They're invoking a signed contract, the new intermunicipal signed contract, to affect a contract that was made, or an agreement that was made prior to the signed contract.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
So
Well, we could,
if you like, suddenly we're coming to, I don't want to use North Lakes College because you're there, but any other organization and saying, okay, well, you know what? Say the library, we gave the library $90,000, but for one reason or another, maybe COVID, they were delayed in getting their stuff through. Oh, well, you didn't use all your money from last year. We're going to pull it back because you didn't use it in that year because our money's down this year. They'd be on our necks. They'd be on our back, whatever. If we would have done that when the rec department was still the recreation society. If we had said, oh, by the way, you didn't get your swimming pool paid for in time, we're going to take all that money back because we have a shortfall. It's the same thing. It's a legal thing, and I agree with Councillor Tanaka. We need to check at least where we stand on this, because how can you invoke a future thing to take care of a previous agreement? And that's all I'll say about it.
Yep.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm not going to be
So-
talking about this.
Brian, do you have, well, you could check, do you have a copy of the agreement that we had prior to the intermunicipal
An old one, yes.
on the funding? You do still have a copy of that?
Yeah, it should be in the bulk.
Okay, it'd be worth looking at that and see what the wording is on that agreement and what had to take place for anything to change.
But also check.
Because I don't know what the agreement that we had before said. And I'm not sure what their rationale for denying the funding was, other than they had never agreed to that project. And I know, well, I should say I know, I believe in the old agreement they had said that they had to approve the projects. It had to be mutually beneficial, but I would argue that water is definitely mutual beneficial.
But I believe at one time when Roy Perdue was still the CAO there, he took out that clause because we were running out of projects, if you remember. On the intermunicipal.
Yeah, but I thought that was going ahead on the new contract, or on the new intermunicipal agreement,
And
though.
then they put it back in when they did the new intermunicipal agreement.
Yeah.
Unapproved projects that would benefit both.
So can you look into that and see what the wording is and maybe share that? And then we can certainly look at and go back to the county and say, come on, we're hurting here. And we are. Yeah. Okay. And then if we need to, we can get an opinion, we can talk to them, go from there. Okay, we had a motion to have an open discussion on that. Anybody opposed to the motion?
Kind of late, we had the open discussion.
Yeah, so it's done. All right, okay. Moving on then to our staff and CAO written report.
Councillor Gilroy.
That council received the CAO Brian Martinson's report and action list for information.
All right, I'll turn it over to our CAO.
From what I had put in my report, I just wanted to let council know that the forestry people from the staging camp out at the airport had been down in JC Park for the last week, cleaning out all the underbrush and dead debris, trimming back willows, whatever, and they've been hauling it out of the bush, piling it, weed whacking, They needed projects because there's no fires within the area, and they wanted to keep the employees busy and keep the distancing and that, so they contacted Rick when he was down in JC Park, and they cleaned immensely down there. If you get a chance to go down and have a look, they've done a great job down there. We're gonna haul some of the branches and that away. They're making piles and that, but they're doing a great job down there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. We were looking at a date of July 2nd to open the aquatic center, because after the last report I give council, it was only open for lane swim, and within the next day they reduced the restrictions on what could be take part in the pool. So there was the water slide could be opened now. The leisure pool could be open now. Family swims are open now. So we're looking at opening sometime July 2nd or right after. The only thing that was not allowed was they said the hot tub had to be left closed until stage 3. So council does, the staff at the pool does have a list of these guidelines, and I believe Gayla's having some of her staff back Friday to go over these and, you know, make sure people are doing the distancing and the registration that they have to do for the swims and all that other good stuff. So that's kind of good news. That gives people another option to get out. I was going to give you the report on the taxes, but I did that earlier, so that's good news that people are still paying their taxes. And Corrine said that we are getting more pre-authorized payments as we go here. So I think she said today there was another 6 or 7 people had, you know, paid up to signed up to do the pre-authorization. So that's good.
Very good.
So we were doing quite well. More than I expected. I thought more people would hold out September 30th, but people are paying. I'm open to any questions if anybody has any.
So, when will you go public with?
When will you go public with the opening of the pool?
As soon as we find out the date.
Okay.
It's already on social media. It's been on it for a week.
Yeah, it says they filmed the.
Gayla had it on social media already.
Not the date is open.
No, not the date.
Not the
They
date.
said they filmed it in TV.
Because they're heating it and they gotta send water samples and that out. Haven't approved. And she was having trouble with one of the heat exchangers in there, so. The second was kind of we kind of looked at July 2nd as the perfect date, but we're not sure whether we're gonna meet that date or not. Councillor Gilroy has a question.
Maybe this is for either for the mayor or the CAO. Did we ever decide on whether we're going to have some sort of parade or something on July 1st, since we're talking about July 2nd already? No drive-by type of thing?
No.
Okay.
They'll get the pool. That'll be their surprise.
And yet, no. Okay. I had a question about utilities. I know that did we have any people take advantage of the penalty deferral with utilities? Because that's being canceled now as of the end of the month.
Very few.
Okay.
Very few.
Like a handful?
Handful, yeah.
Okay, and so hopefully that'll come around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was it from my side. Anything? No other questions? Okay. We'll move on. Oh, we need to to vote on the motion to receive? Anybody opposed to receiving the report from our CAO? Nobody's
I
opposed.
don't trust you.
Judy's laughing.
Okay, so we'll move on to our written and verbal reports. Councillor Danaka.
No report.
No report?
I would like to just ask, is the library now open?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
It is, okay. All right, Councillor Gilroy.
Okay, two things. An MPC meeting with Councillor Long and a watershed meeting. And we've delayed our annual meeting to later to September, and we're looking at holding our annual meeting here in High Prairie. More details to follow on that once they book the place. And I move my verbal report for information.
Okay, again, sorry about that. I can't hear it all, but is there any questions for Councillor Gilroy?
None.
None? And did he move his report for information?
He did.
Okay. Anyone opposed to that motion? Hearing none? All right, we'll move on then to Councillor Long's not here, then to myself. Couple of things. Just wanted, in meetings that I attended, I had a Heart River Housing meeting. I also had a Heart River Housing strategic planning session on Saturday, the nicest day of the year. But that was one thing. And bottom line is, I think the big thing for us is the board of Heart River Housing has agreed on a strategic plan that has High Prairie and the development of that extension to the Pleasant View Lodge as one of their priorities. So that is that's a good sign, and we'll go from there. They're going to be coming around to each of the councils to make sure that councils will agree to that and will agree to the funding in increased requisitions to make that happen. So, Mr. Martinson, you can expect a letter from Heart River Housing talking about that and in the near future, and then they will come down and do a presentation at our council if we want. But that is, I thought, very good news, because there's a lot of priorities on their list, and we made it right up there to one that they want to use some of the requisitions for. So that was really good. We did have a intermunicipal meeting the other day, but it was canceled because we didn't have quorum. We did have some discussion. There was a presentation about another communication software similar to the Connect program that we talked about at our last council meeting. This one was called Voyant Alert. Another very good program, very similar, does the same things, maybe a little bit nicer, but also a little bit more money. So the administrations are going to come back and do a little bit more research to find out the final prices and get a final price, and then come back at it. But that, yeah, and other than that, not much other discussion, and like I say, it wasn't a meeting, it was a little bit of discussion. I had I'll call it a citizen come up to me, but it was actually our commander of the RCMP, Mr. Warren Wright, and he came and talked to me about an idea he had, and I think it's a good one. I want to throw the idea out there and see what you guys think. But, we've always talked a little bit about what can we do to make High Prairie unique. And we have some of the other towns have the biggest bumblebee, the biggest Easter egg, the world's largest beaver, all of those kinds of things. And we don't have one of those landmarks in our community. So he had an idea, and I know we talked a little bit when I was on the Sesquicentennial Committee about what could we do in our town that makes us unique, and what, is there something that we could do as a lasting idea that could go out there. And the committee didn't really have an idea. They couldn't agree on one, but his idea was a giant, the world's largest belt buckle that we could put somewhere in where people would stop and get their picture taken with it, and a tourist attraction. So I'm throwing it out there. I think it's not bad. We could get, what would go on that belt buckle. We could, try to come up with something good that would show about our region, that kind of thing. His idea is that it would cost about $30,000. He thinks. He hasn't done a lot of research on it. But I thought it was an interesting idea. Maybe it's something that we want to pursue. Try to get some costs, see if it's something that we'd like to do. It would put us on the map when we're talking about tourism. He got the idea after watching the news where one of the communities down south had the world's biggest fishing hook. And they were, had pictures taken with that. And that's where he came up with the price, because I think on the news broadcast they said that world's biggest fishing hook was about $30,000 to get it made and put in. So, interesting concept. He had asked someone at the museum, just informally, if they would research and see what it would take to be the world's biggest belt buckle. Because I'm sure there's probably some town in Texas that might have a big belt buckle already. But I don't know if she was going to do it. It was just sort of an informal thing that he had asked her. So it might be interesting to get some more information and bring it back. Perhaps, Councillor Danaka, do you think that that's something that they would do, is come up with, do a little research for us on that idea?
What are you asking them to research?
What it would take to, how big would a biggest belt buckle have to be, and maybe an approximate cost for that.
I can talk to Darlene and see if she's done anything, if that was who Warren had talked to.
Okay, no, it wasn't Darlene, it was the other gal, and I can't remember.
Lauren?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I can check with them and see if they've, looked into it or whatever, and see where they're at with that.
Sure, that would be great. I thought it was an interesting idea, something that would put us on the map. One of the things, Brian, and I just wanted to bring this up, and I'm not sure, is we had the Heart River Housing Strategic Planning meeting in the Gordon Buchanan Center at the Performing Arts Center, and that was really good, but the washroom area there was very dirty. There was stuff on the floor like somebody had spilled, pop or something, and it hadn't been washed. They had, the doors were off the hinges, and they wrote male and female in felt pen on the wall. There's puck marks all over the wall. Do you know if they're planning on cleaning that up? But please talk to them, because it was embarrassing. I got embarrassed at Heart River Housing because they gave me a hard time about how dirty that facility was. They weren't very impressed, and there was several jabs at me, during the meeting because of it. It was poor. Like I know that they've got the summer to do some repainting and stuff. Like those walls need to be cleaned, and they need to be painted again because it's looking shoddy. It's not looking good. So they need to do some cleaning in there for sure. And again, they might have just thought, well, there's nobody in here in the summer, but somebody's going to be using that, then somebody else might rent it, and it just didn't look good. I think that was it from me. One other thing is there's a new doctor coming to town that will hopefully be touring on Thursday. Don't know what'll happen with that, but just an update for you. Okay, I move my report for information.
Councilor Gilroy has a question.
Go ahead, Councilor Gilroy.
It didn't work last time.
Everybody go around. No, I'm getting my
Can't hear him.
exercise.
Oh, he's coming around. I see.
Did you, when you were talking to the constable, did you get a chance to find out about our dog handler? Because we've had those 2 incidences in the last 2 weeks, the fugitives. Secondly, I talked to one of the RCMP constables, and he said the night where they had that night where it was 2 in the morning, where the people shot at our police officers, they had to get a dog handler from High Level, and also a second one from Grand Prairie. So I know it's nice to think about belt buckles, but I would like to think of community safety first. So do you have any idea, or have you heard anything about when this dog handler is supposed to be situated, and can we, if it's slowing down, can we use these 2 episodes to push their buttons so we get the safety we need in our community?
To answer your question, no, we didn't talk about the dog handler position. I suspect it's where we last, update that we had was the dog handler has accepted the position based on selling his house and coming down. I haven't heard anything more other than that. So I'm assuming that he hasn't sold his house, or maybe, yeah. So I haven't heard anything more. Any other questions? No? Okay, I move my report for information. Anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, we'll jump to Councillor Stenhouse.
Okay, so I have a written verbal report. So I attended a bylaw meeting, which was uneventful, and I also attended an FCSS meeting. And so I want to bring up a couple of things. We have to be very, very careful on how we are spending our FCSS money, as they're really clamping down on people who are not following the guidelines. The province is pulling their funding. So we have to make sure that when we pull money from that fund, that it is within the guidelines. They also sent a letter to the red tape, it's a red tape reduction letter, as the seniors had programs for replacing furnaces and whatever hot water tanks. But the program was run very poorly, that it was too hard for them to access it. So this is why they sent the red tape reduction letter, to get rid of their new program and go back to the old one, because people couldn't access those funds or those services. And I think that's all I can say at this time. Oh, they also mentioned that they had the emergency social services training, and our fire chief attended, and they said that was really good, because now, because of the episodes that we've had with the fires and the evacuation centers, that now they have a better working relation with our fire chief and the FCSS services, and hoping that by September they can be to full staff, as one member was laid off due to the COVID crisis. And that's about it. That's all I have for my verbal report.
Any questions? Do you drive or don't you?
No questions.
No questions. All right, move your report.
Yeah, I moved my verbal report for information.
Anyone opposed? No, not this late at night. Nobody's opposed to adjourning the meeting. Okay, that is it. Meeting adjourned.